Ladies and gentlemen, when we consider the complexities of violent crime, there are few cases that so vividly encapsulate the intersection of family, adolescence, justice, and tragedy as the one I will discuss today. It is a case that shook a quiet American community, left investigators with conflicting accounts to untangle, and forced society to confront difficult questions about culpability, victimhood, and accountability when the lines between offender and victim blur. At the heart of this story lies the killing of a father, the involvement of his teenage daughter, and the participation of two young men whose roles added further layers of complexity. Beyond the bare facts of the crime, it is the broader lessons that demand our attention, for they illuminate enduring challenges in law, psychology, and social policy. In October 2017, law enforcement in Oregon responded to what initially appeared to be a routine welfare check. A mother had called authorities after her younger children reported that their father and older sister were missing. Upon arrival at the father's home, officers encountered not the ordinary signs of a family absence, but a grisly scene. Blood spattered the living room walls, shattered glass littered the floor, and a trail of blood extended outside toward the area where a vehicle had been parked. What began as a welfare inquiry was instantly reclassified as a suspected homicide. The absence of both the father and his teenage daughter added a sense of urgency. Investigators were faced with the prospect of a double disappearance, one of which might already have been fatal. The search expanded quickly. Within hours, officers located the father's car, stained with blood and still warm. Yet again, no bodies were found, intensifying the mystery. Soon after, however, patrol officers encountered three young individuals walking openly down a street. Among them was the missing daughter, accompanied by her older boyfriend and a friend. The father was not with them. They were immediately detained, separated, and transported to the police station for questioning. It was then that the case took on dimensions that stunned even experienced detectives. The interrogation process revealed a chilling narrative. The boyfriend eventually admitted to entering the house, while the father slept on the couch and striking him multiple times with a baseball bat. He described his actions in detail, explaining that he had delivered repeated blows until the man was incapacitated. Forensic analysis confirmed that the victim had died from blunt force trauma consistent with his account. The bat, recovered later, bore the victim's blood. The friend admitted to assisting in disposing of the body and, in fact, guided police to the remote wooded area where the victim had been left wrapped in a tarp. The daughter, initially claiming ignorance, eventually conceded that she had handed the weapon to her boyfriend and had told him she was ready for the act to proceed. In that moment, she implicated herself not as a passive observer, but as a participant in the conspiracy to kill her own father. What emerged was not a spontaneous crime of passion, but an orchestrated plan. Investigators uncovered written notes detailing multiple scenarios for killing the father, ranging from staging a car accident to using chemicals to incapacitate the family. Diagrams of the house, with the placement of motion detectors marked, demonstrated premeditations. Text messages between the daughter and her boyfriend revealed her urging him to act decisively, with explicit references to ensuring that the victim was dead before they left the scene. This level of planning left no doubt that the killing was intentional and coordinated. Yet the question of motive remained less clear. The daughter claimed that she had been subjected to years of abuse, describing physical, emotional, and even sexual mistreatment. She alleged that her father had groped her, humiliated her, and made her feel unsafe in her own home. According to her account, her participation in the conspiracy was a desperate attempt to protect herself and her sisters. The boyfriend reinforced this narrative, claiming that his anger and fear had been fueled by what she told him. In contrast, her younger sisters denied any knowledge of such abuse and described their father as loving and supportive. They asserted that the only conflict stemmed from his attempts to restrict their sister's relationship with her older boyfriend, a relationship he had forbidden. Friends of the daughter reported that she had spoken of mistreatment, but their recollections focused on strict discipline and verbal conflict rather than sexual abuse. The absence of corroborating evidence left the allegations unresolved, and with the father deceased, his voice could never be heard. The legal proceedings that followed highlighted the difficulty of assigning responsibility in such cases. The boyfriend pleaded guilty to murder and conspiracy, receiving a sentence of 25 years to life. The friend pleaded no contest to conspiracy and received 15 years. The daughter, charged as an adult despite being 15 at the time of the crime, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and was sentenced to 25 years. The parity between her sentence and that of her 19-year-old boyfriend, coupled with the disparity between her punishment and the shorter term imposed on the older friend, raised questions about proportionality. Advocates argued that imposing such a lengthy sentence on a teenager ignored both her developmental immaturity and her potential for rehabilitation. Others countered that her active role in planning and facilitating the crime warranted severe consequences, regardless of her age. This case forces us to confront the difficult balance between accountability and compassion when dealing with juvenile offenders. Neuroscience and psychology tell us that adolescent brains are not fully developed, particularly in areas governing impulse control, foresight, and resistance to peer influence. This reality underpins the argument for treating juveniles differently in the justice system. Yet here we confront a teenager who not only participated in but actively encouraged a plot to kill her parent, documented in her own words. Can immaturity excuse deliberate planning? Should youth shield one from the full weight of responsibility for choices that result in irreversible harm? These questions resist easy answers, and they illustrate why the case has continued to provoke debate years after sentencing. Equally important are the ethical considerations surrounding the investigation. The daughter was interrogated for 10 hours without a guardian or attorney present. Although this was legal under Oregon law, critics argue that it was inappropriate to subject a minor to such prolonged questioning without support. Children and teenagers are particularly vulnerable to pressure in interrogation settings, and lengthy questioning can lead to false or coerced admissions. In this instance, however, many of her admissions were corroborated by physical evidence and written documents, reducing concerns about reliability. Still, the broader principle remains. How should the justice system adapt its procedures to protect the rights of minors while ensuring that serious crimes are effectively investigated? Beyond the courtroom, the case resonates on a societal level. It demonstrates how the dynamics of family conflict, adolescent rebellion, and unhealthy relationships can converge with devastating consequences. A forbidden relationship between a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old became a focal point. The boyfriend's role as an older partner raises questions about grooming, control, and the responsibilities of adults in relationships with minors. At the same time, the daughter's actions suggest a degree of agency that complicates any narrative of victimhood. She was neither a wholly passive participant nor an entirely autonomous actor, but something in between, a minor making catastrophic choices under the influence of older companions and under circumstances we may never fully understand. For the surviving family members, the consequences were profound. 2 younger daughters lost their father, and, in many respects, their sister as well. One spoke publicly about her father as a kind and loving man, emphasizing the joy he brought to their lives. She rejected the abuse allegations and sought to honor his memory by pursuing a path he had encouraged. At the same time, she maintained some form of relationship with her sister, acknowledging the complexity of loving someone who had caused such harm. The mother was left to reconcile grief with anger, struggling with the knowledge that her daughter had been interrogated without her knowledge and later convicted as an adult. The family, fractured by tragedy, embodied the enduring human cost of the crime. In the years since, the daughter has pursued education while incarcerated, earning advanced degrees and demonstrating intellectual growth. Supporters cite this as evidence of rehabilitation and argue that she should not be defined solely by an act committed at 15. They contend that long sentences for juveniles ignore the capacity for change and risk extinguishing hope for reintegration. Opponents, however, point to the calculated nature of the crime, the detailed planning, and the manipulation evident in her communications. They argue that her achievements in custody do not negate the responsibility she bears for orchestrating her father's death, Both perspectives reflect broader debates about the goals of punishment, retribution, deterrence, rehabilitation, or protection of society. Ultimately, this case illustrates the limitations of legal systems in capturing the full complexity of human behavior. Courts must rely on evidence, testimony, and legal standards. But beneath those surface elements lie tangled dynamics of family, psychology, and influence that resist neat categorization. Was the daughter primarily a victim of abuse who saw no escape but violence? Was she a manipulator who drove older companions to kill for her benefit? Was she both? The truth may be some combination, shaped by subjective experience and inaccessible to external judgment. What remains incontrovertible is the loss of life, the suffering of survivors, and the lasting scar on a community. As we reflect on this tragedy, it is important to draw lessons for the future. First, the case underscores the need for vigilance in protecting minors in interrogation, ensuring that their rights are safeguarded without compromising the integrity of investigations. Second, it highlights the importance of proportional sentencing that accounts for both the seriousness of the crime and the developmental realities of youth. Third, it raises awareness of the dangers posed by relationships between adolescents and significantly older partners, relationships that can foster secrecy, manipulation, and destructive outcomes. Finally, it reminds us of the profound human cost of family violence, which reverberates long after court proceedings end. In conclusion, the killing that occurred in Medford was not merely an isolated act of violence, but a confluence of adolescent vulnerability, family breakdown, and flawed choices that culminated in tragedy. It compels us to think deeply about how we, as a society, handle young offenders, how we weigh allegations of abuse, how we assign responsibility in conspiracies involving both minors and adults, and how we support families fractured by violence. There are no easy answers, but by confronting these questions openly and thoughtfully, we honor the memory of the life lost and acknowledge the enduring challenges that such cases pose for justice, compassion, and human understanding.